Early 2005, I was 9, and I don't know about you, but during these times, I was interested in only three things: having fun with my friends, playing video games, and football being my very first passion. For many people of our generation, we got introduced to the beautiful game through national competition rather than club football, meaning that it was either through the 2002 World Cup in Korea with a tremendous Brazil team, or it was through the Euros 2004 won by the surprising Greek team. If you remember correctly, the early 2000s was an era where Nike and Adidas were killing it with their creative ads built around big competition as well, such as the Olays, the Juga Bonito era, the Road to Lisbon campaign, etc. etc. These ads used to show extraordinary moves that you will barely see during any normal games, but more so in the streets. At this age, through these ad campaigns, I perceived footballers as superheroes. Talking about heroes, there was one figure that encapsulated this whole period on its own. Ronaldinho, of course. Barcelona, Brazil, the iconic Nike crossbar advert, which if you don't know yet, is the very first video that ever reached 1 million views on YouTube. Ronaldinho was that guy. So having all that in mind, picture this. When I came across this cover in a shop, it was more than natural for me to be interested in that PS2 game. I mean, look at it. You could see him perform what seems to be like a rainbow flick on a white grungy background in which you could see a fence and a bridge, all contrasting with Ronaldinho being dynamic in this image. Him with the popping colors on him made by the patterns of an urban environment made of traffic lights, pedestrian crossing on the ground, and buildings. And his trainers were looking cool, I'm not gonna lie. It was so cool that I wanted to play the game immediately. I mean, how come there's a FIFA with this much fun in the cover and my favorite player at the time? In comparison with the regular FIFAs and PES, the difference was huge. Also, another detail, there's this EA Sports big logo at the bottom. Let me elaborate on that. First, before diving into the experience of playing the game, let me briefly explain to you the context in which this game was made. While at the time EA were leading the sports simulation market through their several games, FIFA Street was made by a section of EA based in Vancouver called EA Sports Big. Its founder was... Listen, I don't even want to butcher his name, so I'm just gonna call him Steven, yeah? Alright, let's continue. He was a former World Cup freestyle ski champion and funnily enough, was part of the team that developed the first FIFA. So his background naturally led him and his team to create the first EA Sports big game based on the sport he mastered, SSX. It was a critical and popular success. Then basically this essence of arcade sport games led to create the quote-unquote Street franchise, starting with NBA Street and NFL Street. EA Sports Big went as far as fighting games with the Def Jam saga. In all these games, the substance remained in the name of the fun, emphasizing on the player's skills and tricks with an over-the-top gameplay, for the better and for the worse, to be honest. Now the idea is to reuse this formula but with football in order to make the very first FIFA Street. In terms of gameplay mechanics for this game, I had the privilege to speak with the lead animator, Kevin McDonough, about the early development of this game. My initial role was to essentially start from scratch and develop a football game. Creating a game from the ground up at EA at the time was quite unusual. It was myself and Robert McCracken who literally sat down at the desk and began brainstorming. What's important in this game? How do we approach the creation process? We started by making a list of moves that a player could use. In our initial pass, we came up with maybe 10 or 15 skill moves, such as nutmegs and tricks like the Maradona turn, moves that allowed the players to beat their opponents. By the end of the FIFA Street project, we had over 250 moves to beat a player in the game. And then it goes on by saying this: we were making a game that was very much inspired by the Nike commercials at that time, which featured a cage match style of football. The goal was to create unique, creative moves that not only showed style and flair, but also allowed players to humiliate their opponents on the field. So basically, you're telling me that there's a video games that emulates the football that I love. That's a no-brainer. Thankfully, my cousin bought me the game on PS2. Let's see now how it looks. Each time you boot up the game, you get this intro. Bear in mind, in 2005 is the first time you get a football game with this kind of tricks. I mean, we are coming from this or this to this. As you can see, there's volleys, tackles, and tricks left, right, and center. From there, it sets the tones on how the game is meant to be played. Far from the referees and the rules, no offsides, no red cards. Well, the flair is not an option, but a statement. Just like in any local playground, you could argue. Let's pause it here for a bit. You see these two people behind Ronaldinho? They are literally legends, considered as godfathers of street football. Lenny Neteb and Edward Van Gils, part of the Street Wizard crew with Ismail Amdawi, nicknamed Issy Itman. And let me tell you a little secret that was revealed to me by Brian Robinson, working on the title at the time as an animator. Lenny and Edwards were also part of the motion capture team. He's saying this: "We had a good group of international producers that love football and futsal. They found two of the top street footballers in the world at the time from Holland, and they brought them in as motion capture talent. We also had local footballers from the Whitecaps and one young Canadian player that learned quickly from the Dutch players and brought his own moves as well. They were fantastically talented. I had the pleasure of directing some of the motion capture shoots with them. I played football as a youth and had a good time trying to stop these guys from not making me between shoots. I managed it once." Kevin McDonough also added this: "They were incredibly skilled and showed us moves that were native to the Netherlands indoor and street football scenes. Their contributions were invaluable." So when you first arrive on the game, you get Game On and Friendly, both modes that let you hop on a game quickly, Rule the Street, which is essentially the career mode, Create a Player, which is self-explanatory, Start Team that allows you to create up to 4 teams, Options, and Street Training, which is a tutorial video on how to play the game. And that's pretty much it. On paper, we have to admit that the content of this game is not humongous. The mantra of this game is to go on pitches all around the world and beat any team facing you. You don't come out of that structure, meaning that your game is solely relying on the gameplay, just like in every game, you could argue. The challenge now is to make that gameplay enjoyable enough on the long run without being repetitive. We'll see if later FIFA Street can avoid that pitfall. Alright, enough of the menu stuff. Let's play a game quickly before doing anything else. Quick Brazil against England at Marseille, 4v4, medium level, first team to get 5 goals wins. Let me tell you one thing, guys. I haven't played this game in like 15 plus years easy, but I can guarantee you that after a few moments, I still get the same exact feeling as when I was a kid. Instantly remembering all the buttons, the animations, the noises of the tackles, even down to the commentaries. Big up that skill there. The cool thing about this game are the skills and the tricks. You can't play a match without being flashy. There are 2 ways to do some tricks if you want to beat your opponent. Either with triangle on PS2 using the random trick button, or flicking the right stick to a certain direction in order to get a certain trick. From first glance, this system looks simple, but there is a bit of depth in it. Depending on the position of your player in relation to its opponent and to the pitch, the skill outcome will be different. Show him not skills, nutmegs, sombreros, eliminating on the side, having your back against the defender, using the wall, pressing the skill modifier button. I have to admit that one of the strengths of the game is the variation of situation you can put yourself in order to beat your defender, with the amount of 50-ish tricks in total. And on top of that, there's an incentive. The more different skills you do, the more points you get. This is accentuated by the fact that repeating the same skills is digressive, as each time you repeat it back to back, the skill points are divided by 2, preventing spamming the same trick over and over again. You also make points through high passes, taunting skills that can seem useless at first, but they're actually not, because the AI will then press you automatically, as he will do in real life because your opponent is vexed. This is a good technique to attract your opponent on your side. Accumulating all these tricks will generate combos that eventually fills up the game breaker meter. If you're watching this video, you probably know what is a game breaker. Once full, a powerful super shot can be performed, which obviously increases your scoring chances. This is the equivalent of a finishing move, you could say. Actually, about scoring goals, apart from using the game breaker, it is kinda arbitrary to say the least, since scoring a goal is at 90% relying on the AI willing to save the shot or not, if we're being honest. The goalkeepers are able of making the most miraculous saves like prime Manuel Neuer, or being a complete liability like Donnarumma in a high-pressure Champions League game. Yes, there's a shooting indicator on the bottom of the screen, but really and truly is not that useful. A thing that struck me and needed to be highlighted is the sheer amount of pure creative first touches preceding shots and passes. Big shout out to the motion capture for that. I mean, look at this. So combining that with all the tricks and combos, it results into having sequences of football looking like it's from a Joga Bonito advert, even down to the goalkeeper's animation. It's all fun, arcadey, flashy, but not quote-unquote unrealistic. Brian Robinson added this. With street football, the in-house motion capture studio had to try a few different methods of capturing the movement of the ball, as mainline FIFA had never done this at the time, and the trick moves of the street football were far more complex than the professional footballers usually did. We wanted to put a lot of style and flair to the movement of our game beyond straight motion capture, so we came up with ways to exaggerate things using traditional animation principles to make our movements even more fantastic than they already were. Defending-wise, there are 3 mechanics to actively take the ball from your opponent, either by countering a trigger with L2, intercepting a high pass with triangle, or making a ruthless tackle. The fact of the matter is, although these methods are hit or miss, they offer a wide range of getting the ball. I mean, you are against someone playing possession football by only making high passes, just intercept them. Against a full trickster, defend him using the block button. You simply don't give a damn and the only thing that you want is the ball, just be reckless and tackle him from the back, to be honest. Which is, by the way, top 3 of the most satisfying feeling in the world. Streets are fun, but streets are also cruel. Listen, I'm not gonna pretend. I'm not Digital Foundry, so I can't say that graphically the game could look better. I do not have the right competence to do so. The only word I can have is on the art direction. Aside from the menus having a slight grungy look highlighting the street aspect, the overall look of the game is fine with the realistic approach on the players. But it's quite interesting to see these players now wearing more casual clothes instead of the official team kits. It's not often that you can see Ronaldo wearing jorts or Henry wearing a tank top. You can customize your player's attire to a certain extent. One thing I found really cool was that there was some official kits coming from Adidas and Nike, which makes the street football aspect more grounded, if that makes sense. It has to be mentioned that every single footballer has its own face, with more or less success, but we appreciate the gesture. Not any single face is generic, which represents 250 plus real players from 16 countries. They wanted to pay homage to the heroes of this game. Another side note, we did FIFA Street from scratch as well, and the team opted to not use the FIFA engine to make the game. I think that's what made it such a different experience from the flagship. About the playgrounds, there are 10 in total. 3 accessible from the jump, and the other 7 are unlockable through career mode. They kinda capture the atmosphere/identity of each location respectively through Easter eggs and attention to details here and there. Let's talk about the soundtrack here and the overall sound design. The music does just as much as the playgrounds in establishing a mood for the game. The soundtrack is also incredibly eclectic. Reggae, trance, and Spanish hip-hop are just a few of the genres that add to the worldwide feel of the game. FIFA Street boasts minimal but mostly realistic sound effects and an often entertaining commentator from intros.
The new school, FIFA Street, identical to none. When you think about New York, I know you're thinking about the hip-hop culture. No team holds fear over this crew. I hope they're up for it, because these guys play to the end. So let's get ready.
And also breaking the fourth wall from time to time.
Pause. You've only gone and paused it.
Alright, so let's talk about the progression system on career mode. Rule the Streets allows you to create a player and a team from scratch with basic players, so the idea is to climb up the ranks of street football by first winning games in different playgrounds all across the world, starting with either Marseille, New York or Rio de Janeiro. For every game you play, you get rewarded with skill builds points that can be allocated to either improve attributes of your player, which includes speed, shot power, shot accuracy, tricks and defending, to buy an access to play a match with a player on the line, and lastly, to buy the entry for tournaments called Rule the Street, which is the end goal. A Rule of the Street tournament includes 3 games. The quarter and the semi-final lasting 6 minutes, and the last one lasting 10 minutes. After winning a tournament in a town, you get rewarded with SB credits in another playground where you can once again get a certain set of players to improve your squad and so on and so forth. Aside from this, there is another currency called reputation that allows you to unlock some cosmetics to customize your player and your teammates' attire. It's like a virtual status where you are seen as an amateur to be a pro in the streets. Long story short, I have to admit that FIFA Street's career mode is quite repetitive. Once I said this, my thing is this. The 9-year-old me will not see this as repetitive. Why? Because at this age, you are more excited about how cool each match looks and you can't wait to grind until the point where your own player is making a Robona to R9 so you can perform another red kick wearing total 90 trainers. However, now at my big age and with more distance, I realized that my main problem with the gameplay is basically it doesn't evolve with the player's progression. What I mean is that although you get new teammates, new pitches, new trainers, each game is similar. Whether your team has 13 or 93 overall, it's not as different. The ratings of the footballers in this game are not so prohibitive nor advantageous. Now it's up to you to know if it's a good thing or not. You still have the same skills, the same animations, the same cutscenes, the same commentaries. The progression system remains the same from Marseille to London. With that being said, there's something I need to mention. This mode is relatively short. I took around 10-ish hours to complete the game at 100%, which is by today's standards not that long. I'm at a point where I don't know if I should thank the game for the fact that there is no artificial way to increase the playing time. At the end of the day, I said it was repetitive, not redundant, meaning that being repetitive is not a default on its own, as long as there is always the fun factor. My take on FIFA Street is that it was a product of its environment. You have a flourishing company, EA Sports Big, promoting street aspect defined by no rules and pure fun in a common urban environment, on sports that have produced successful games such as ski freestyling, American football, and basketball. So reusing the same formula in football, the most popular sport in the world, seems to be an obvious and an automatic W for the Canadian studio. And it was, for the players looking back at it, a breath of fresh air, playing football not from the professional/star system/overly tactical perspective, but from the love of playing football in the street and humiliating your opponent like many of us got to play football for the first time. The game respected us because it did not waste our time. There is a very interesting video made by Drew Gooden that I recommend you watching on how modern entertainment products are more and more prone to making us spend more time on their respective platforms/medias at the expense of your experience. Whether it's with your boys or against the computer, hopping on a game is fun either it's 2005 or 20 years later. At least, this game had the decency to make you play the game, not spending the time on it for the sake of spending the time on it. One of the main criticisms of the game at the time was that the AI wasn't good enough, which contributes to the repetitive aspect of the game. Because you as a player can, in the span of a few games, identify the pattern of the computer and find a way to counter it to your needs. Which is absolutely true, to be fair. However, there's winning and winning. There is victory and there is glory. Beyond winning a game, the way of doing it is what matters to me. If you play a game without trying to perform any trick, not getting any game breaker and passing the ball around to avoid tackles from your opponent, you understood the assignment wrong, in my opinion. You can't play it safe in FIFA Street. And this is why at this point, my brothers and sisters, I have a confession to do. I played the game at a medium difficulty, to be completely honest. Not that I can't win in higher difficulties, but I don't take any pleasure playing against an AI that won't let me express my creativity through skills, passes, and shot animations. That can be debatable, I completely understand. But me, when I play FIFA Street, I play for the flair and the extravagance, not for the challenge nor the competitiveness. Because playing on hard and super hard mode reveals all the flaws of this game, really and truly. Not responsive, clunky physics, and the worst of them, the players getting stuck on the animation regardless of what's happening. Animation are a strength and a weakness at the same time. It's what's making FIFA Street, and this is what can make the game unbearable for a lot of people, to be honest. Even though this game has aged in some areas, its essence of urban football remains iconic. It's a game that celebrated the spirit of football as a street-level experience, focusing on fun over competitiveness, something modern FIFA games miss with the increasingly complex mechanics. We can clearly see that they tried to come back to this golden era with different game modes such as Volta or Rush in their more recent installments. But FIFA Street stood out by not being bogged down by the constraints of realism in opposition to the modern EAFC titles. FIFA Street was different. We could take more liberties and inject more fantastical plays into the games. We were not constrained by silly things like realism and could try things they could never do in regular FIFA. A fun side note though, our moves were so cool, the main FIFA team wanted to use some of them in FIFA. I think our producers made them wait until after Street was released, before they could get their hands on our stuff. There was a little bit of internal rivalry, I think. In conclusion, FIFA Street legacy is embedded in its sense of freedom and its playful take on football, a refreshing contrast to the realism-driven simulation of main street football titles. FIFA Street still resonates with many of us for its bold approach to blending creativity with sport, a formula that continues to inspire the way we engage with football video games today.
No,